Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of AngularAir. I'm your host, Justin, and on today's episode, we are going to be reminiscing about the past. We have a former panelist coming back to join us again, and we're going to talk about his legacy and dive into some stuff, and we might test him a little bit to see how much Angular knowledge he might still have. Should be fun. Looking forward to it. Let's say hi to our panelists, and then we will say hi to our guest. Joining us today, we've got Alyssa. What's going on, Alyssa?
Oh, not much. I'm just glad to be here. Hey, everyone.
Nice. Hey, and thanks for running the episode last week. It was awesome.
It was so fun. We missed you, but also there was a lot of shenanigans, so it was good stuff.
Nice. Are you saying that when I'm here, I control the shenanigans and you are free when I'm not there?
It's your aura, your virtual aura. It calms the shenanigans a bit, so it's nice.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll work on that so everybody can feel a little more free to be shenanigan-y. I don't know. All right. Well, and everybody should check out that last episode because there was some awesome content on potentially getting rid of NG modules.
Yeah, optional NG modules, and we had Igor and Powell on. I never want to say it wrong, so I'm like. But no, it was a wonderful show. Lots of good questions from the audience. So check it out if you haven't seen it yet.
Nice. And we brought Jeff in as a panelist for this episode. Jeff, what's going on?
Not too much, man. How are you doing?
Doing good. Good to see you. Hey, people probably didn't know. They're looking at the screen going, well, which one is the guest, right? What is our focus today?
No. It's been a long time since I've been the host. So you've been killing it, and I'm just happy to be here.
Well, we always enjoy having you back. As always, you're always welcome. And anytime you want to join us, we're happy to have you. But it'll be great because I think you know a little bit about our guests as well. Austin, what's going on, Austin?
Hey, everyone. It has been a while. I am so excited to be back. I think it's been like 2 years, maybe?
Yeah, probably. Time flies. Yeah.
I know. Just the other day, I remember putting on my panda head for the first time on the show.
I know.
Well, nothing really has happened in the past 2 years, so that makes sense.
Yeah, you haven't missed much, I mean, we missed you though. That's for sure. Sure.
Good recovery.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think since version 2, the last 2 years have been the most changes, right? Like the most changing time for Angular in its history since the very first eruption of change. I think so. With the compiler and now this stuff. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm forgetting something sneaky that happened.
I heard a rumor that they're ditching TypeScript and moving to CoffeeScript.
I'm never gonna live it down. Never.
These are the kind of gems that you're gonna get during this episode. So just a little context there. Back in the day, Austin and Alyssa used to always have discussion about CoffeeScript and TypeScript.
Because I used to work with CoffeeScript, and I was on a team that was so excited because the Angular team at one point in history, maybe you don't know this, it was pre-TypeScript. They were like, should we go with TypeScript? No, we should leave it open. They can use whatever they want. And my dev team was like, CoffeeScript. And then I don't know what happened, but they just...
Wait. So Alyssa, you actually had a production app with CoffeeScript?
Yes.
That you developed with CoffeeScript? Wow, that is...
Yes.
It's impressive.
I don't know why it's impressive, because like in the Rails world, it kind of, I don't know, right? Like that's what
Cypress.io used to be CoffeeScript. Come on.
What was it? What used to be?
Cypress used to be CoffeeScript.
Cypress?
It did? What? I didn't know these things.
Open source. I remember I pulled the repo down and I looked at it and I was like, this is CoffeeScript.
I just want you all to be really, really honest right now. There are worse things you can find in source code than CoffeeScript.
Yeah, it's WPF probably.
I like to say like everything has a purpose there, but that's me ruining the shenanigans, so I'll just keep quiet.
Does anyone know here that you work on WPF, Alyssa?
I don't, even Mike. So Mike is gone today, and God bless his soul. I was in the airport yesterday flying home from Boston, and he DMs me, and it's the DM of a friend, like friends don't let their friends write WPF. And he goes, I don't know who's guiding your .NET journey. And I said, I am. I said, it looks cool and I'm going to learn it. And he's like, let me show you the ways of .NET. And I was like, come on. So he's going to come on my stream, I think in a couple weeks, and teach me some basics. And I know there are so many things in .NET that you can learn outside of that. I really was excited about like When UI and desktop development because the whole .NET community is talking about it. But I don't know if you
thought that
know
was
this.
called Electron.
Yeah, yeah, there was a lot of I was like streaming and the chat kept going, maybe you should try Electron or Uno or like literally 50 other technologies. And I think that's why the .NET industry is so exciting to me, because like it's like sprinkles. You like walk in the room and they just throw sprinkles at you, you know, with options. So
how did we get deviated to sprinkles? You're making me hungry now.
I'm so sorry. Also, are you in a new office? Is this new? How old is this office?
I am.
It's an office. It looks like his closet.
Oh, that was rough. Technically it's a sunroom, which we have those in Florida. No, it's not my closet. That's a 3D printer with a drone.
All right.
And all kinds of.
Hey, is that what you printed out your GitHub contributions on? The little graph?
Here, I still have it.
I have to see.
So GitHub had this thing where you can actually download your GitHub contributions and it puts them in a 3D format. And you can actually take that and then you can convert it to something where a 3D printer can print it.
Holy cow. That's awesome.
Oh, that is so cool. I honestly, when you first held up, thought it was like a skyline.
I know.
That's so cool.
Is that just 1 year or is that over the course of time?
2020.
2020. Okay, so we're not going to see your Angular community contributions in there, right? Because that was pre-2020.
Look at those spikes.
That is so cool.
So you should get some printed out for your past projects, right?
I'm sure you can. You do that? I'm sure you can.
And then we can point to the skyscraper that says, this is where you helped with the data table. And this is where you started NGXS.
We get in there with like a really tiny paintbrush, you know, and we like color it red. where all the Angular spikes are.
Oh yeah, that's what we should do. I should change the print colors to red and blue.
Oh, that's right, because they have different print colors. That's a thing on 3D printers. Also, I know the audience really wants to know, Jeff, what are you drinking?
Oh, it's just Starbucks iced tea.
Oh, are you a sweet iced tea person or a plain?
Oh my God, not sweet.
Not sweet. Okay.
If you order the sweet from Starbucks, it's like
it's half sugar. I know.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
You know, I used to be a barista there, and one of the worst stories I have is this woman who would come in on the reg, Jeff, and ask for 25 pumps of classic in her
25.
And the first time I made it for her, I counted it out and I held it up, and it was like, I'm not even kidding. It was like a third of this cup. And I go, does this look right to you, ma'am? And she goes, oh yeah, that's it. And I was like, I kind of cried a little bit. I was like,
oh my God.
Kept making her beverage and she kept coming back. And I was like, how are you not dead? So I know what you mean. They do make it sweet, but they also allow you to just bastardize it if you want. So oh, sorry. But Austin, you're in Florida. Have you always been in Florida? Is that
no, I lived in Florida when I first started on the show. And then I moved to Austin, Texas for about 1.5 years. And then I came back to Florida.
Oh, okay.
I bought a house and I'm kind of stuck here now.
Like, I love it. We have a 10-year plan that makes my parents really sad before Daniel is 10 to be back in Florida, just because my time there, it felt like home. Like it was wonderful. So when I hear you're there, I'm like, oh, he's home. Look.
So when you were in Austin, how many times a day did someone make a dumb joke about Austin and Austin?
Oh my gosh. It
nonstop.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm like, oh, I've never heard that one before.
Well, now you're back home though. That's good.
Yeah. So you were on the show in Austin, and give us like a high level of like where you were working and then like the journey that led you to the beautiful state of Florida again.
I was working. So there's one thing in Austin, Texas that like everyone's always like, it's so hot here, right? Like it's hot, like we hate it. I feel like they say that, but so I get there and I'm like, okay, I can do hot, right? And there's not very much humidity, and so it doesn't feel that bad. Now, what happened was when it gets to the summer, unlike here, where like when it's humid, but you still get breeze from the ocean, there, when the wind blows, it's more like a blow dryer. And then for the year and a half that I lived there, I had 2 winters, and both winters it snowed and got into the 30s, and everyone's like, oh, this never happens. Like, this is like such a crazy fluke. I'm like, well, it's happened twice now. I pledged to myself that I'm not living anywhere again where I have to wear a coat, and this is breaking those rules, so I'm coming back.
I have that same rule. I don't wear long pants, so nowhere that I have to wear long pants, out.
Really?
Shorts all the time.
I mean, I know you wear shorts all the time, but I just thought it would show off your killer calves. Like, I thought you were super proud of those puppies, and that was like, I was like, I'd show those off too, but
no, technically it's so like if we have a zombie invasion, I'm super mobile. Because jeans too tight. You can't run from a zombie in jeans.
I guess, but you got really like a thin layer of bite protection if you do get caught. If you have jeans. Whereas you're just like yum raw leg.
I'm just all or nothing, can't get caught.
Wait, I forget, Justin. I know we haven't done conferences in a while, or at least I haven't. But even for conference talks, it would always be shorts.
Yes, absolutely.
You walk on stage at NGConf in shorts.
I fight the system, Alyssa. I fight the system. Yeah. Oh, so here's some. So in Angular in Denver, so the conference we had in Denver in winter, it snowed there, but I was outside in my shorts. But let me give you full context. Like I used to live in Colorado, and even when I was there in Colorado as a kid, I would wear shorts a lot in the snow. So.
But you still puff coat it though, right? Like.
Oh yeah, upper layers all layered, warm. Okay. Just gotta keep the legs free. Hey, so anyways, Austin, what are you completely out of Angular right now? Are you doing any Angular, or is just no Angular right now?
I just can't escape it because I had been like on the wagon of no Angular. No, I'm just kidding. I've been working on React.
Can you explain why? I don't know. I had a deep conversation with a dev yesterday, and he was telling me about his love of React. I'm just not sold. Do you love it, Austin? Are you in love with it?
I think it is very easy and very It's very not a lot of complicated things to get in your way. And it's easy to learn. And so
I guess, but like you've been deving for how long? I feel like you could just pick up any language you wanted,
Well,
like,
that's not, I mean, I do still do a lot of dev, but I like recently sold my company and I kind of do more like higher level architecture type stuff now. And so when I think about like a framework like React being easy, I think about it like, okay, I can scale my team with that, right? And so that's how
I see that.
I'm not thinking about it like myself, because of course I can learn anything in like a day, but I'm just kidding.
There's the Austin we remember.
There he is.
So yeah, I thought one of the things that's exciting about this episode is that we kind of get this perspective from you on, you were in the Angular world, then you were out doing other stuff. So how now is your perception about that comparison? Like Alyssa was asking, what can we learn from you about, your previous experience with Angular and how you're now comparing it to other experiences and what it tells you?
Yeah, I can tell you right now, there's some things that I really don't miss. ng modules, Zone.js.
Okay, Zone.
There's solution for both of those coming, so you're okay.
And honestly, I don't really even miss RxJS.
Word. I cut that out? Cut it out.
Let me just edit. Oh, we're live. Sorry.
And I also don't miss the state management debacles.
Debacles. Like you're talking about the arguments of how it should be done and what you should use, that kind of thing, or like just managing your state is a hard thing and you don't want to do it.
I don't even use state management in the app that I wrote recently, and I just use GraphQL. It's pretty freaking awesome.
Oh my God. Can you please tell me, is GraphQL the future? I don't know. I keep hearing it being brought up. And someone on stream told me, they're like, it's going to replace everything. And I was like, can it?
No, I don't
Can
think
it
it'll
do
replace everything, but I can tell you, like, the past like 3 projects I've worked on used it like 100%, and like I can't go on another project and like they're making REST endpoints and they're like, what do you need? And I'm like,
you're like, I need GraphQL.
Yeah.
So just to be clear,
oh, sorry, you go.
You're using GraphQL for your state management now going forward.
Yeah. It is out of the box. I mean, Apollo has state management. You can even do local state with it. So it gets a little awkward, I think, with the local state, but yeah, I don't miss any of that stuff.
What about dependency injection?
I don't. JavaScript it implements a locator pattern. It's not like C# or whatever, or Java, right? Like, you don't really need this like singleton type craziness, because JavaScript by default kind of has that. Now that creates like this conversation. If someone was like a hardcore BI person, they would just like rail into me right now, I'm sure. But like, I mean, it does have like some downsides where like it gets tricky to like do unit testing and stuff like that. But I won't go into that because everyone on this call knows my opinions about unit tests.
All right.
But yeah, I think React has this thing, context API, which is basically DI, but it's DI that's like the same way that you would describe like an element, like putting an element on the page, right? And so that's if I need to like do like broadcasting or like store variables in certain contexts somewhere, that's what I use. And I think it works great. I actually saw something the other day. It was talking about how Redux is dead, but the dev tools are like, everyone loves them, and that's gonna like outlive Redux in the real world. Like people like bootstrapping on the dev tools of Redux. I feel like Jeff's got a comment there. You're like thinking very hard on this.
No, I think that's right. I mean, just with the data and state management stuff, it's interesting what you're saying, because I think you're right that from a developer experience standpoint, there is a lot of benefits to GraphQL, which is kind of what you're touching on. The one thing where it gets more tricky is when you get into certain types of apps that have different performance like characteristics, where like you want to keep like the client as thin as possible, and like you actively want to push more stuff on the server side. But that's only for like probably a subset of apps. Like the majority of stuff don't need that, you know what I mean? So I think you're right most of the time.
Yeah, and it's also good to like context my perspective of the world is very B2B apps, very enterprise applications. And so I'm typically not thinking about that scenario that you mentioned, right? Like I have never actually even put a app into production that does server-side rendering, like using Next or something like that. Right? But that is worth noting. Like I'm typically building enterprise or B2B apps.
B2B.
Hey, on the reactive side though, am I wrong? I've not been keeping up with React as much, but like RxJS stuff, aren't they using Rx underneath the scenes for some of the use state? Like they have a reactive model for I thought I saw for some of the state management stuff. You might not be utilizing it, but they have something there, right?
They have what they call now Recoil, which is not Relay and it's not Redux. It's like a new thing that they came out with. I actually kind of like it. It's very thin and lightweight. That I think that might be what you're talking about because it has observable like properties. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I do not like about React. Like I talked about how like I don't have to deal with all these like modules and stuff like this. And hooks are both like hooks and having to use the functions are both amazing and super annoying at the same time.
Why are they annoying?
Whereas I remember when they talked when they were talking about React's getting rid of classes and we're going to make them functions because it's much easier for people to understand, right? I don't know how that's possible. Like, I guess though, because I have been in software engineering so long, like classes just feel so nice, like organizationally wise for me. Like my OCD is just like so intense that I even like resort my functions all the time, constantly.
What you know what it is? That there are this mix in the React community of these practicalists or like people that are practical and these like purists, right? Like you're more on the practical side, but there's definitely like a fairly decent chunk of purists where this pure functions and trying to like make everything kind of clean and they sometimes they go a little bit too far, right?
It's honestly like effects, like React tried to move out of like component lifecycle, like mount, unmount, that type of thing, which Angular is very heavy on. And they tried to move into more of like a reactive type of like a pure function approach. And I think it's ironic that they were talking about how classes like aren't very like newbie friendly, but they're using these like reactive concepts, which, oh my gosh, like still today, I struggle with like when is a use effect or when is a use callback need to be memoized or not. And, you know, it's complicated. And I think that, well, I'm hoping that it gets easier, but yeah.
Do you see that, and like Jeff, do you think that like the Angular community has that same sort of kind of separation or grouping there? Or is it because Angular provides this entire platform out of the box that is opinionated and has stuff set in the ways, and you kind of have that defined for you, so you don't have these groups battling back and forth? I mean, there's certainly is still plenty of room for that, right? But you know, on this level, right, it's kind of more driven for you because Angular is providing that guidance there.
Yeah, I mean, there are these different groups, I think, in the Angular community as well, but they're slightly different. Not really purists as much as like people that are probably the object-oriented, like people coming from the C# world back in the day, who like want to
writing everything.
Yeah, they want to make everything into C#. You know, those people. So you have that group, but then there is the practical people too, like which is fair enough. They just want to get things done, and a lot of times for Angular, like slightly different than React. For Angular, the practical people are just like, just tell me everything. Like don't make me make decisions about what component library to use and all this other stuff. Like, although you obviously have to do that sometimes. But the idea of having a lot of the libraries built into the Angular core is really appealing for those people that just kind of want to buy into an ecosystem and just tell me what to use for everything.
I mean, a perfect example, my husband just started like a new client and they're using React and he's never done it and he's picking it up. And as he's learning it, he's showing me pieces of it. And he's like, did you know you have to do it this way? And I'm like, wait, what? And so a really good example is ngIf, right? Like, I take it for granted. But like, there is no ngIf in React. Those
I used to think the same thing. Sorry to cut you off, but I have to interject here.
Yeah.
I used to think the exact same thing. I was like, I totally need this thing, right? And honestly, it hasn't even came through my mind.
Well, and that's where the Gennady, the dev I was arguing with yesterday in Boston, he was like, no, you just throw some JSX, you use a JavaScript if in your template. And I made this face that he goes, well, no, it's not pretty, but, and that right there encapsulates React in my mind. Well, no, it's not pretty, but, right? Because it's just, there's so many ways that you can do that ngIf like ability, right? And I am very much on how Jeff was saying, can we just have one way that everybody does it and it's in the docs? And then I'm like, yeah, there you go.
Here's something that a hardcore React person would fight with you on. If you're going to say like, I wish we could just have one way. Well, technically that if statement that you just described is the one way. It is JavaScript. And so they had to implement like custom AST syntax parsing and implement their own language. So technically wrong.
So I want to throw in a PHP perspective here on that, because I used to do some PHP development, but I think that this can kind of tie in, right? It's the idea that when we're building our markup, we need a way to logically do something, right? Like this if, is we need to add logic to it. And so if we're in PHP world, we have PHP script that we can do to do that. If we're in JavaScript, or React, we have JavaScript, right? In Angular, we don't have a way to write code directly into our markup, right? We have to use directives, pipes, all that sort of thing, except for the small template syntax that it does support, right? So in Angular, we're left with having to rely on having like an ngIf directive to apply template logic, right? Where all these other things you can just write it. And so I think that's that world where, if maybe the first approach to working with DOM in this kind of programmatic way is through Angular, then you might not be aware of this other, what it's solving, right? Sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely nice to have, but it feels like to me, it feels like this, I have to use an ngIf because that's the only way I can do it. I would love to just write JavaScript in my Angular HTML template and conditionally do stuff, right? But I can't.
Yeah, I was recently it's been a while, and I recently was looking at a larger Angular code base. Someone was asking me for some help on it. And I was trying to look through the code, and I couldn't even remember how to write a for loop with the thing. I'm like, I just want to write a for statement. But then I had to go back and look at the Angular syntax. And I think that is one of the strong principles that React kind of has that's nice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, the good side, if when it's in this directive or pipe or whatever, is that now you have this ability to tie it into the change detection system and things like that. And so that's, part of that wraps into the ability for the Angular engine itself under the hood to manage, change detection stuff for you.
Well, but the one thing I would say with that, though, I feel like I'm being devil's advocate on both sides of various points of this conversation. But speaking on sort of the React side for what you just said, Justin, is that there's abstractions that are leaky sometimes, that should I have to know about that? That's like an optimization underneath the scenes that in an ideal world you wouldn't have to know about that. And I think the Angular team would tell you that too, that in an ideal world, developers wouldn't have to be concerned with things like that of how to get things most performant. It just does it. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of those things where, yeah, it is a way that, you do make the app really performant. But I think in an ideal world, and hopefully in the future world for Angular, that stuff like that will be less and less of a thought process with developers.
Yeah, I felt like when I was doing a lot of Angular stuff, I was always worrying about change detection and Zone.js.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trade-off, right? I mean, that was original AngularJS was this idea of doing data binding, right? Using scripting to do data binding to your DOM. And then there's that element of it handling the change in that data for you, right? And so then Angular out of that becomes just more robust platform of doing that for us. So we're using the ability to write logic and control template stuff, and then have data binding, happen for us with the engine taking care of it for us, right? So I think like that's really, if you step back, it's at the heart. To me, I see that as the heart of Angular, is giving you that ability that it manages that for you, right? But with that comes a lot of challenges, right? To understand how to get it right and to do it right, or the biggest thing I know, I always talk about this at Angular, even though Angular is opinionated and has stuff set for you, there's still so many different ways that you can do everything, right? And so how do you figure out how to do the right thing first, or the thing that fits for what you need first, before learning that later, right? In production, it's challenging.
Yeah, I guess my perspective is also slightly skewed because I was working on library stuff where you really have to worry about like change detection. And I remember like all the things that I had to do to make it not deal with change detection, and then all the things I had to do to make it explicitly deal with it, which is probably different from the majority of developers.
So you worked on that data table, right?
Yeah, it's like your favorite thing, right?
Well, I'm just bringing that up because it's that, I'm sure there's plenty of change detection issues right in there.
Yeah,
that you had to deal with, right?
Yeah, that Ngx Data Table. And by the way, when I looked at this project that I'm working on, that's Angular, I haven't looked at Angular in like 2 or 3 years. I opened this project up, and all the open source projects are like prefixed with Ngx. And I remember I was like, oh, like,
so just a little back history on that. There was a time when people started creating libraries in the very beginning of Angular, right? And we're talking Angular 2, and people would append their front of their library name with ng, right?
NG2.
And Angular, well, ng2 at the time when it was ng2, and then when it just became just Angular, then ng, right? And so out of the box, Angular uses ng prefix all over the place, and so we had these other libraries that everybody was using ng, and it became this potential confusion of what is official from Angular and what is not. And so there's discussion in the community. And didn't you bring the Ngx?
I tweeted it, yeah, Ngx, because it was based on Ngxs.
No, it was before that. Wasn't it before that? Like before you made Ngxs, you were in that conversation about let's use Ngx
with Todd Motto.
Yeah. And so now Ngx is like the de facto everywhere. That
I know. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool to see.
Your legacy lives on, my friend.
Yeah.
One of the many, along with the data table, right? Let's talk about Ngxs. You want to? You want to revisit some past?
Sure.
I mean, I know you're not on this state management thing anymore, so it might be a little touchy subject, but
I mean,
created something. So
yeah, it's I mean, it's got a pretty big community. It's pretty crazy. Like, I remember when I made it, Justin, you and I were talking, and I'm like, I really like making pretty things like data viz and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is kind of just like boring. It's just like state stuff, right? And I open sourced it, and like everyone loved it. And I'm like, of course.
Right. Yeah, because we were talking, and you're like, I got this library, but nobody's really using these things. And then you do that one, and it's like everybody wants it, right? Which,
I know. I know.
So the backstory on that, I was at a dance convention for my daughter, right? And I think we're up in like San Jose. And so I'm up there, and as a dance dad, like there's a lot of times you're just not able to do anything, right? They're out in there getting their costumes ready, all this stuff. And so you're pretty much like in the lobby on your computer or something. So I'm sitting there on my computer, and Austin starts messaging, hey, I'm going to build this state management library. Okay. And so we just sat there and chatted. So I'm at this dance convention chatting back and forth with you, and while this inception of this Ngxs comes about. That was really fun.
Yeah, that was really cool. But it's still going strong. Like occasionally I go and look at the repos. I'm still admin on the project, so I can see like all the insights and stuff. But I still go and look at the repos. I mean, there's a large-ish team working on it all the time. The docs are really good. Like people are opening and closing issues and pull requests, and like it's crazy to like just been gone so long, and then now look back and like it's grown a lot. Seems like it's still pretty popular. Like,
What was really cool about it is that we just sat there chatting, and like over the course of the weekend, you manifested this thing, right? Like it didn't take
I'm
long.
like a
Now,
crazy.
That was cool because it was like based on the fact that like, okay, there's state management. How can it be improved, or how can it address some of these issues that it's not addressing, right? And so there's kind of a little bit of a blueprint there to go off of. But it was cool to watch that just like
The
come
real
about
reason
in a
it,
couple days, right?
the real
Actually,
reason it was all created was because I hate switch statements and I just wanted them to be in classes. Just kidding.
I forget, Austin, was at that time when you had this conversation with Justin and were thinking about it, had NGRX been created yet, and you were thinking of doing something different, or it's more like simultaneous and you were just trying to solve the same problem at the same time?
NGRX was out, and I had used it and didn't like it. And I tried to talk Mike into changing some things, and he said, "No, I'm not going to." And I said, "Okay, I'm just going to build my own."
Like what, for example? What were some of the big sticking points?
So one thing I never really liked, and this goes back to this like whole purist thing, right? I always hated like I wanted state management, but I also wanted like async things to happen in the state. I know that, again, let's go back to the purist thing that we were talking about. But I always thought effects were just so messy and so difficult to understand, at least at the time. I just always wanted like do this, like do something async and then manipulate the state, like just in one thing. Very practical, right? But keep it at a global level, keep it optimized and things like that. And that was one of the big things. The other thing was I actually really do hate switch statements. I don't know why. It's just my OCD. And it was like functions and stuff like that. And I wanted it to be like classes. I wanted it to feel like Angular code. And that never did. And, you know, it was really kind of those two things.
And we talked about the fact that like you also were mentioning locating that stuff in a common place, right? The select, yeah. So like bringing in the selectors and the reducer and that logic into that class, right? And using decorators to kind of say, hey, look, I can look at one spot and see the one spot that's doing these pieces rather than segmented pieces that I have to mind map the story to, right? And so I think that was another thing that you were trying to solve with that.
Yeah, trying to reduce the boilerplate as well.
The boilerplate.
Boilerplate by design.
One of the things that I was always excited about with that was that concept of being able to, have the action call and know when the action call was completed. I remember that. Like that was one of the big things in the beginning. We were talking about that, and we're talking about the fact that like sometimes you need to know the caller that dispatched that action really wants to know when that's completed without having to go through the hoopla of having to say, well, do I need to set something in state that's a flag that lets me know when it's done? Like I just want to call it and know it's done, right? And then under the hood, it can do the state management, set things up in the state or whatever, but I need to know when it's done. If I click a button to submit a form, I want to know when all this work is done so that I can take you to the next step.
I want the form to be disabled. I want the form, I want the form to be serialized and sent to the server. And then I want it to come back and I want to deserialize it to the view. And then I want to set the UI back to active, right? That would be like 4 different actions.
Right. And that's all concern of the component needs to understand its own state and just say like, when I show the button active, not active, like that's all me in the component. I just need to say, go do some work and then tell me when you're done. And then I know what to do next. Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because you guys are again describing like this difference between the purist thing and the practical thing, because like at the end of the day, NGRX has like 100% bought into RxJS and reactive programming, right? Like everything is based off of reactivity and like streaming, combining streams. Like that's why all that complexity exists. The benefit from, now I'm speaking on their side of things for just a second, like the benefit is for some of these complex interactions, like you can do some powerful stuff, like when you're dealing, like combining streams and stuff like that. Now you might write code that is like totally new developer coming in would ever understand it, but it would be like 3 lines of code and it would be doing some cool stuff, right? But it can also be like a pain. It could be hard to learn or whatever. So like if you're taking things from the practical stance, like, okay, I wanted to accomplish this job, but like forget about making me jump through the hoops. I'm just gonna like shortcut it, and I don't care whether it's not fully reactive or whatever. Who cares? Like just get me the job done.
But at the end of the day, does it really matter? Like as long as it does what it says it needs to do in a acceptable performance.
In all of these scenarios, is there actually a difference as far as like, would the user ever notice? Like, are they all pretty much quick and fine and they work? Like none of them are like, oh, don't do that.
I think from
like,
a user standpoint of the application, then the experience is the same, right? Like they experience, unless there's some performance scenarios, right? Then their experience is the same. It's really how do you manage that code over time, right? And all those things, from how do we write it, how do we understand it when we look at it, even if we're the ones that wrote it, when we need to edit it 3 months later, to like what Jeff said about new people coming on. Like it's all those factors that come into our software architecture decisions that come into play of how do we want to approach that, right?
Yeah, lately I think about scale, like how to scale my team, how to scale the code, how do I improve the reliability of the code, add more features. I think about those things quite a bit lately. And thinking back to like NGRX effects or those crazy RxJS streams, like I'm just that is difficult to scale. It is cool. And this also goes to like another thing is like sometimes devs just like these type of things because it makes them look cool and they're the only ones that know how to do it. It's not really about the rest of the stuff.
Do you actually think that's true? Because in my mind, when I meet these devs on the street and they're talking about their stuff, you know, their effects and such, in my mind, that those 3 lines of code that Jeff talked about and how they're so simple and they're so beautiful and they do so much.
You didn't say simple for the record.
Oh, well, simple as far as like, you know, they're 5 characters long. In my mind, they're just so much smarter than me that does look easy to them, that I can't get on their level, so I have to scurry back to my simplicity. Like, so like, do you actually think there are people out there using that type of state management, but like it takes them a minute to grok? Because in my mind, if they're using it, they're like at a whole other plane of developer, you know? Like, no? Yes? What do you think? I don't know.
I would say that's a problem though, right? Like let's make it as easy as possible so as many people can use it and build on it.
You know, I try and help people to, you know, learn development skills, take it to the next level. Like what I really always try and impress is that there's this, you know, approach. Are you building application software for the enterprise, right? Are you building it for a company? You're trying to ship software. If so, your purpose and your thought process that goes into that has to take an effect. The fact that you need to ship software, you need to have teams that can work on that software, and you need to solve business problems, right? And you need to eliminate, or not eliminate, I'm sorry, you'd still have it there, but you need to balance that along with your purist approach of this is how I want to write code, right? If you're writing code for your own application that you're in total control, fire away, right? But if you're in this other equation, you need to bring all these things into play to really elevate your development skills to understand how to build successfully, right? And so this process of thinking about how do we get a team to manage the code over time? How do we able to ship these things in time? What works? What balances that? All those things come to that equation, right? And, and it's tough, especially when we're in love with, man, I can write this 5 lines of effects code and it's badass, and I feel like, you know, I'm flexing. But at the same time, you got to balance that and bring those other factors and say, does that really make sense?
Yeah, I think a really good lesson that I had in that was building open source software. Like everyone is a critic, and they all have their own opinions and stuff like that. And when you see all of these and like you watch the code iterate a few times, you see it start to get pulled back to be more practical. But it's just how it evolves, right? And so I also really love like starting on new projects because you're able to like write this like beautiful code. There's no bug fixes in there. Like it's just magical and clean. And then the next part of the project, I'm like, ugh.
No,
You
man.
can make my code all ugly with these.
My favorite is when there's like a beast, you know, and they give you access to the beast and you like peek under the covers and you're like, how did you do it over here? Ooh, look at that difference. Like, I love it. I love it.
Too funny.
It's like an archaeologist, you're looking for clues and you're dusting things off and you're trying to learn what they did in the past, right?
Yeah,
Why.
no, I think it's so fun to piece together. Like I've come to a couple of different like clients before with their, and I was like, okay, look, you have this up to this date, and then this seems to be, is this the new way? Like I love making those kind of documents. It is like an archaeologist. You're a code archaeologist.
So I will tell you, so something pretty cool that I've seen recently was this startup that runs code analysis on your code, but it doesn't do it for like a lot of them do it for like linting and stuff like that. It actually analyzes your code to see your coding style and then identifies anomalous code styles. So if like someone comes in and like writes your practical and writes like this crazy purist stuff, it'll just like
It'll show you that that's like, this is the odd man out. That is so cool.
Oh my God. What's the name of this? Take my money.
I don't remember. I'll look it up. I'll get it for you all. But it was pretty cool. Have you all tried the GitHub Copilot yet?
Oh, I
have not tried it yet. No.
Tell me, have you tried it, Austin?
Oh my gosh. Hold on. I need, like, it will literally like write copy for you.
I don't understand how. Can you show me?
I'm gonna.
I keep hearing buzz about it, but I'm like, I don't really understand. What is it?
I wasn't prepared to show my screen, but I'm going to anyway.
What is Copilot? What is it?
It like it does an analysis over what you're typing, and then based off of what all the other open source projects that it has analyzed in that particular
so
language.
like if I'm writing like a template with a form or something, it might autocomplete my button or something.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's another level.
I mean, that's cool enough. I don't know what other level you want.
Okay, so check this out. So I've got Copilot on. So see what this line says? The series component that renders components.
Okay.
Copilot's on. See that? It's already started typing. I didn't type any of that.
The name of the field and the size of the chart?
Component to render. Like it just typed that entire line.
Okay, does it only work like in certain file types, or does it?
No. Look.
Like if you're over in.
Actually even better. It wrote a better comment than I did. It put the data to be displayed in the tree map. That's actually better than mine. So it actually found that this component is tree map.
Is it AI? Well, I'm confused. What is it?
Who
are you?
Yeah, it wrote that. I didn't write this on line 10. You see that? I didn't write any of that.
Every time I kept hearing, whenever you go to your like an old GitHub repo and it'll be like, it's got like these little banners on GitHub and it's like, you need to update this dependency or this security thing, or like, I thought that was what everyone was talking about. So it's actually not even on GitHub. It's an extension in VS Code.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see. It's like, it's trying to auto write code for me down here. It kind of gets annoying sometimes, but I will tell you, majority time, like it's right.
How cool.
Well, it wasn't, it's not AI, but in WebStorm or whatever was, this was like years ago when I actually did do C#. So I have done .NET way in the past. Yeah. They have
too, by the way. I just like harassing Alyssa.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool. So you're both coming on my Twitch channel. I'm writing your names in to teach me the ways of .NET. I gotcha. You're cool. Anyways, what were you saying, Jeff?
But they do have, I forgot what it's called right now, but they do have a really advanced autocomplete
ReSharper.
Yeah,
yeah,
they use-
ReSharper, right. That was it. Exactly. ReSharper, it doesn't have AI, but like ReSharper will write like huge amounts of code for you as well. Like I always found that useful.
Thank
So
you. I'm
they
so
also
looking
have
that up after this.
a lot of the ReSharper logic inside of WebStorm. That's what makes your WebStorm so powerful for
Hate WebStorm.
productivity. Is that it
Why?
provides all this productivity under the hood because it's using that ReSharper type of logic to, understand your project, track through navigation, show you code that it can build, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of WebStorm.
But why though?
It feels like I opened Eclipse and I'm like,
For those of us who don't get that reference, what are you talking about?
that's like the old school Java editor.
Oh, huh.
Feels like I'm like back in Visual Studio or something.
I was gonna say, Austin, I've been lately working on actual Visual Studio on a PC, like on a Windows. So I don't think what you're saying is irrelevant. I think jumping into WebStorm would be like, oh, like.
So Mike and I still have an episode planned where we're going to compare VS Code and WebStorm and show the different things and values.
You got to make sure you have Copilot on, because it's like I was skeptical, but
But Copilot's independent of the IDE and editor, so
yeah,
it doesn't.
It's on both.
So they actually got in trouble because they use GitHub and they literally trained it on all the code in GitHub that's public.
Wait, why is that trouble?
They got in trouble because some of the ones that have like restricted licenses, they still like ran the training on them.
I don't see the problem. What's the problem? It's not like the code is gonna give you like some super secrets from somebody else's code, right? Like what? Why is that a problem?
Like
the licensing.
It does that autocomplete for you. So if it ran code analysis on a big repo that doesn't have like very permissive licenses, and it's writing code for you based on that code, that's where it kind of gets into trouble.
Because some of those licenses require that if I used this code, I should be. I mean, there's different ones, but like sometimes you have to give them attribution, sometimes do whatever. But if some like this, is just automatically thrown in there, and you don't even know, like you're not giving them the right attribution, and it's violating the license.
Okay, I guess I just thought because it's such. I mean, like. Imagine all of the code on GitHub. Now imagine the part of that code that has those particular licenses. It's probably a small enough amount that what like Autopilot is producing is like so watered down that like you would never be able to be like, how could you pinpoint what it's pointing to? But I can see what you're saying, like that it's still against the license. I just don't know if anyone could ever prove like that auto suggestion right there is from my code. Like.
Well, it's like if Austin has a library that he wrote, right, that has a license on it that says, hey, look, this must have attribution to recognize that this is the code coming from this library. And the GitHub thing inserts that code into your code, but doesn't tell you where it came from, then it looks like they created that code for you. It wasn't Austin's code or whoever managed that library. It looked like GitHub created that code for you. And so now they get all the credit and the perception that it's theirs, that driving it, but it was actually the library author that did it, right?
I don't know. I'd argue on GitHub's sake that it is their code. Like you're using their service. It's like Facebook. My mother-in-law gets so pissed off whenever they will do something with one of her friends' posts or something. And I'm like, well, then stop using their platform. Like you gave them rights by putting your thing up on there. And so I don't know, in a way, I'm like, it is GitHub's code though. Like it is the conglomerate.
Well, not a lot of people pay also. There's a lot of enterprise and stuff like that.
To have that, yeah. No, okay. I could see it. So I guess, did they just start stripping out like licensing?
I don't know. I don't remember what happened, but when it first came out, I think someone actually had an example of it.
Where they could point? Because I just was assuming it would be so watered down and generic that
I need to try and find it. I remember it being on Twitter and there was like a huge thing about it. But it's been a couple.
Can you imagine being on the team building Autopilot? How crazy would that be? We're going to comb all of it.
It's like Google back in the day going, we're going to search everything, right? It's the same crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it's time to disrupt GitHub. Maybe they need a solid competitor now.
Ooh, just it's spicy.
Good luck with that.
right? They kind of do a lot of things.
Jeff is like, yarn didn't really pan out, so why would no? Just
It's like you said, Justin. You know what? I want to create a new social network. It's like
Right,
yeah.
pretty much.
Yep.
That's the level. But somebody's got to
I
do
actually
it.
think it would be pretty fun to try to create a social network that does not use any cloud service. Like,
what?
like
Like
if you wanted
like
to,
a peer-to-peer thing.
yeah, but at scale, real.
I don't.
Or
Ask me
get it.
sometime about my
not even
ask me
peer to
sometime
peer.
about my Instagram solution that's like that. We'll talk about that.
Hmm.
Awesome.
All right. So before we go, what does everyone think about the new MacBooks?
Oh,
More
I
ports.
haven't seen them. What do they look
Oh, you're
like?
in Windows land. Do
I'm
we
in
like the touch bar being gone? Like, what's the?
Oh, the touch bar's gone.
I don't mind the touch bar either way, so I don't care about that. I just like the upgrades and CPU and all that type of stuff. Like that's usually why I get a new MacBook. I don't care about
Are your team Silicon, M Silicon or whatever, M1?
Huh?
M1.
What?
Actually, I don't know about that. What are you talking about? Is
The
that
new
different type?
processor versus Intel.
Oh yeah. Does it make a difference? I don't know. What do you think?
Apparently it does.
I don't know.
It's gonna help me type code faster. Then sure, I suppose.
I
It
mean,
comes
Jeff,
with Copilot built in out of the box.
I was okay. You've never ran into, because my MacBook's not that old, but there are some things where I'm like, I guess I need to restart the server. Like when the fans go, you don't ever run into that with what you.
For me, yeah, no, I do because
Oh.
so I was sort of being glib. Like that's majority of the time, but I do have a new setup that we run everything through local Docker, and so that can eat up a ton of CPU and
Oh, good
memory.
Lord, yeah.
So I did actually have to get a new laptop last year when we started doing that. But so I didn't get this new one obviously, but the last year's model of MacBook was enough once I upgraded it.
Okay.
So I sure, like definitely there are times when it helps to have a ton of horsepower.
What about the new VS Code running in the browser that John Papa tweeted about yesterday?
Oh, spicy.
Is it VS Code what is it, dev? VS Code.dev, I think, or something like that.
Austin, are you just saying that because then you don't need to have as powerful of a laptop?
Yeah. Here, I will send you lightweight version of VS Code in the browser. Local file viewing and editing, debugging, designed for like Chromebooks and iPads.
Oh, is this the thing where, oh no, that's different. Like, because there's some sort of shortcut on GitHub repos, right? Where you like do some sort of hotkey and then it like opens it in an editor. That's different than this?
It is.
Okay.
I believe that Microsoft made Monaco, I think it was the name of it back in the day. Then that was the editor running in browser. And so then all this stuff was based off of that, right?
Yeah, but they didn't actually have VS Code in the browser. They just had the code editor.
Right. Like the engine underneath it, but now they have like the full VS Code experience. Like, I think you can install extensions and everything through there. VSCode.dev, I think is how you get to it. And
VS Code. Okay, I'm totally.
Yeah.
Are they using similar tech to how like StackBlitz is doing their like node in the browser stuff?
Yeah, I think that's Monaco, what it used to be called Monaco, that Microsoft put out, and that was the engine to run code editor inside of HTML, right, and JavaScript. And so I think that's the heart of that, and that evolved over time, and that's what people use. That looks just like VS Code because it essentially using the same thing, right?
But the crazy thing is, how does it run Python code analysis, browser, or like VS Code extensions in your browser?
You have to watch our episode with StackBlitz when they came on and put the OS in the browser. Maybe it's something along that.
Close to that, yeah.
Awesome.
I just opened a project in it in VS Code.dev. It's looking pretty good. It's faster than I thought it would be.
Nice.
Cool. Very cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour, so I guess we're going to wrap this thing up. Should we do picks? Anybody have any picks?
That was my pick.
That was the pick. That was my pick. No, your pick, my pick.
I remember from when I was on the show that I always have to make sure I give my picks first. That way I don't get any of mine stolen.
I like it. That was the thing, and you got it in there. I like that. Nice.
Yeah, I got to pick.
Yeah.
So it's something that maybe we should have a separate episode on even. I have started using Pulumi. Do you guys know Pulumi?
No, spell it.
Pulumi.
Oh.
It is essentially Terraform with TypeScript. So it's for infrastructure as code. When you're writing code in order to create your AWS or GCP or whatever your cloud environment. And I've always hated with like Terraform, which is a common way to do it. It's all in YAML files, like YAML config files, which is just a pain in the butt.
You hating on YAML, Jeff? Is that what this is
about?
about?
I'm hating on YAML. Yeah, me and YAML have a big hard. But no, this is, you write actual TypeScript, and it's awesome. Besides like being a familiar syntax, like there's a lot of like cool stuff you can do to like just for like dynamically creating certain resources. And cool. Like I'll like share even config files between both like my actual application code and my code that's generating the infrastructure, which simplifies a couple things. So I'm a huge fan of Pulumi.
Well, is this a paid sponsorship?
No paid sponsorship.
Yeah. He's willing. If you want to sponsor Jeff.
Yes. Sign me up.
We have Kate Sky next week, Jeff, but I think we've got an opening after that. So I'll ping you. I would love to hear more about it and see some demos. So that would be amazing.
Sounds good.
Nice.
I'm sharing my link with you, darling. So yeah, I will, as we joked about, I've got Layla Codes It. She is a streamer and a new friend that I've made in the .NET community, and she's going to be on with me next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, doing a basic console app in C#, kind of going over the basics. I think we're calling it Back to the Basics in C#. But I've been doing kind of like a lot of weird, funky deep dives into like, I was like, let's do WinUI or WPF or Blazor. And she's like, hey, why don't we take it back to the basics? You seem to not know C#. And I was like, I don't know C#. So it'll be a good show. It'll be a good time. So check it out. That's my pick for next Tuesday. So
Nice console app. My very first app that I ever wrote was in C, and it was a console app to manage the Denver Bronco starting lineup. There you go. So if you need a purpose for what your app's going to be, I can throw
the Denver Broncos starting lineup. I got to work that in somehow. I love it. I wonder if there's an API for that.
All right. So I have a pick, and this is going to be in the entertainment side. I've binge watched Ted Lasso. And,
oh my gosh. Dude, you got to binge.
I just want more. So it's
an
awesome series.
Me and my husband have this new rule, and sometimes we break it, but like, we hate watching week to week. We hate it. So we try to stay away from all our friends and tell them all to hush. And then we don't watch. And then we'll have one epic weekend once the show is finally all released.
I agree.
No, that is the way to do it for sure.
Yeah, but the reason why they don't do that is if they release all the shows at once, then you have no reason to stay subscribed to them. I feel like with Disney Plus, like, when they release something new that's like worth it, I'll re-up my subscription and watch it all, and then I'll cancel my subscription after that.
Yeah, but Netflix doesn't have that problem, but that's because Netflix has more content. That's the problem, right? Is that Disney and then they don't have enough content, so they can't manage that.
Sometimes they put out some really cool stuff, and you're like, I really want to watch that. And the only way I can watch it is buy a subscription. So I'm just going to buy the subscription for the month, and then I'll cancel.
I don't know. Austin, when your baby needs Cocoa Melon and they need some Cocoa Melon, you don't cancel subscriptions willy-nilly. Let me tell you something, sir.
I don't even know what that is, but I'll take the word for it.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, back in the day, my day was Little Einsteins and
oh yeah, it is all like music all the time. The first time we watched an episode, my husband was like, when are they going to stop singing? And I was like, I don't know. Literally, there's no talking in the show. It's all, and every episode, just all singing. The kids love it. They're all about the Cocoa Melon. So let me tell you, sir, You don't get willy-nilly with subscriptions.
on your kids. Right? Awesome. All right.
This
Well,
was
hey,
fun.
Jeff, thanks a ton for coming on and being panelist. Appreciate it. Always great to see you.
Always good to see you guys.
Yeah. And Austin, this was super fun going down memory lane. We miss you as well. It was fun to talk about your life experiences. That was fun. Thanks a ton for coming.
Do you have the panda to put on before we end the show?
I was looking for it.
We can't find it. Ah! All right. We'll just have to. Like,
his kid's gonna be like 15 years old, looking through the attic and be like, "What the heck is this thing?"
He had like one eye falling off. All right. Well, hey, as always, both of you, anytime you want to come on as panelists, let me know. Let us know, and you're always welcome. So join us on any other show going forward. Please let us know. Want to see more of you.
Yes.
Someone's got to harass Alyssa about
There you go.
CoffeeScript.
Listen, when it comes back, you're going to be eating those words, Austin.
Nice. All right, that's a wrap. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one. We'll catch you next time. Later.